If I ever took a loss, I learned a lesson. I won't ever think I'm better than the next man. I've been down before to come up, I ain't stressing. Baby, I'm too busy counting all these blessings. Count it up. Line 'em up. Swear the sun shining on me, get my heart up, no matter that trouble surrounding us. They don't see that it's a lot of us. Everybody moving anonymous. Won't take that credit, I know what we get it. Them blessings be coming from God above. I was doing all kind of bad, what a quiet. Tell him I need a verse. Hit the pew and tell God he's first. Hit the studio, the body a verse. I remember pushing mom and Lil Wayne high, there with no gas money. I just bought a car, cash money. I ain't even trying to brag on it. I just tell it how it really is. I ain't tripping, they ain't feeling this. I ain't saying I deserve nothing, I'm just trying to talk about the benefits. I've been punching in the clock, trying to keep the kitchen stocked. Man, it's a blessing, cause we ain't never had a lot. But all we need is all we got. Whew. If I ever took a loss, I learned a lesson. I won't ever think I'm better than the next man. I've been down before to come up, I ain't stressing. Baby, I'm too busy counting all these blessings. Count it up. Blessings. Count it up. I put my mama in the grip to stop stressing. I put my girl in a brand new diamond necklace. She said she need more of my love and affection. Cause lately I've been working harder than ever. She said, baby, you a boss. Baby, clear your schedule. Darling, you a boss. Let's do something special. Take me on the PJ, we should go to Mexico. I've been down for you, boy, since when the money was low. Anything for my back, cause she a blessing. If you woke up this morning, it's a blessing. If I ever took a loss, I learned a lesson. I won't ever think I'm better than the next man. I've been down before to come up, I ain't stressing. Baby, I'm too busy counting all these blessings. Count it up. Blessings. Count it up. I took so many losses, could've lost it. Yeah, left him licking like a faucet. Almost cost me everything that I got, all of my fam. Part of the plan. I was eating fried bologna out of the pan. Y'all don't understand. I was trying to get it. I'm in that studio trying to keep it pushing. Patty pies, boy, I kept them cooking. All I needed was the Mary, but the guy in me was having commentary. Woo! I got angels all around like a Nita Baker. Blessings falling in the line, guess I need a taper. And every loss is a lesson. Tell my haters I confess. Treat them like the green bubbles on my iPhone. I probably never read the message. If I ever took a loss, I learned a lesson. I won't ever think I'm better than the next man. I've been down before to come up, I ain't stressing. Baby, I'm too busy counting all these blessings. Count it up. Blessings. Count it up.
Yo, what's up, everyone? Thank you guys again so much for tuning in this week of the UnPacking T.R.U.E podcast. I am your host, Jay.
And I am your co-host, Paige. And here at the UnPacking T.R.U.E, we love God, we love people, but we also love beer.
Let's go.
Thank you guys for coming back. We didn't get to tell you guys this 2 weeks ago when we were doing... What was our topic 2 weeks ago?
Spiritual score?
Spiritual score, exactly. Before we ended, we definitely wanted to emphasize how grateful we were, not just for you guys tuning in to come and, vibe with us, but more so for doing the hard stuff and really checking in with yourself and doing something for yourself that day in terms of mental health, spirituality, whatever you want to label it or whatever box you want to categorize it in. Those aren't easy things to do. Self-care isn't easy, but it should be a priority, especially moving forward into this year. So, yeah, thank you guys. Thank you guys.
Yeah, for sure. Like Paige said, we didn't want you guys, yeah, we didn't want to go without saying, give yourself a pat on the back in terms of taking care of yourself and just having the awareness, to, like she said, to check in with yourself and seek help. Or even, if this is educational or if this is helping you in any sort of way, we just didn't want you to feel like that was being overlooked. And even within yourself, just give yourself some credit in that aspect. So yeah.
Yep, 100%. So before we get into content today, if any of you guys are on any social media platform, Instagram, Facebook, I heard specifically. I heard Facebook was real heavy on this topic. I don't use Facebook very regularly, and I haven't seen it too much on that end. But again, I don't use it regularly. But I did see it on TikTok because, I be scrolling until I fall asleep. But if you guys know the name Derek Jackson or have heard it within the last week, you might know that there was some scandal going on in the Jackson house. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about what happened and what you know, I guess, historically about Derek Jackson, who he is?
Yes. So Derek Jackson is one of the, in my opinion, like the groundbreaking influencers in terms of like the term influencer. Like he made a whole life on encouraging people and giving relational advice. And so he was like the Hitch of social media, so to speak. And so that's also probably why like maybe you don't see it as much on other platforms, is because I think most of his content was through Facebook.
Oh,
and
okay.
so just even having the understanding of the demographics of Facebook, it's a little bit older crowd. And so maybe more people our age or older maybe have a better understanding of who he is. And so anyway, Derek Jackson is just a guy who made a living on influencing people and encouraging people about relational advice, specifically more so about women who've been hurt or had their heart broken or who've been played, and for dudes, deadbeat dudes or players, so to speak. And so that's how he made his whole life on social media. And he came out with an apology video saying, he was going outside of his marriage. And so I didn't even know he was married. So that was kind of...
That was actually very common. Like
yeah.
nobody
Yeah, all his videos were like
knew that
him.
he was married.
He was always sitting in a car, and it was always looking like he was like shooting from either some sort of holding device, on his dashboard,
Yeah.
or he was taking the selfie himself. But it was always shot from his car or while he was driving. It was never like with his wife, or even mention of his wife, or even at home. So it was like really, really weird that now this is the first time I'm hearing about him, even being married, and that he's been married for almost 5 years. And so
right. And do you think that, well, just a side question for those of you joining us, do you guys think that that's an issue, that he's built a social media platform and a following based on giving relational advice, but nobody through his following knew that he was even in a relationship, or that he, I mean, this is all, preference, I guess, because some people feel like privacy is the best policy and the least people know, the better. But from this standpoint, from somebody who has built a living, has books, has a platform for this, but nobody knew that you had a wife.
Yeah. I think from the brand side of it, like if he's building a brand on his persona and how that may not appeal to, say, single women.
So his audience,
it's the truth. Okay. It's the truth. I think, from a business standpoint, people who understand the workings of a brand, if that's your reach, if your reach is single women, and that's, predominantly your audience, then, maybe speaking about a marriage and your relationship isn't going to do anything for somebody that's single.
Yeah.
And so if he's speaking from a married standpoint, they'd be like, I can listen to this married man, like, or they might be jealous or envious of this guy versus actually listening to the content he's putting out. And I will say, like, early on, I listened to him, and I mean, most of his points were pretty valid, and I thought he was putting out pretty good content.
You said you had seen his content prior, so do you think his content was targeted for a female audience versus a male audience?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
But
so you said it was all about like heartbreak and if you'd been kind of dragged through the mud.
But the thing is like if you're a man, I mean, you doesn't mean you can't take what he's putting out for single women, like,
and take notes.
Yeah, because he's speaking more so from the side of he's trying to help the woman who's been brokenhearted.
Okay.
And obviously I think he was speaking from, I guess, his own experience from him breaking girls' hearts and how he can speak on that. Yeah. And so you can still learn from something like that even as a man. I think, it doesn't. Yeah. But anyway.
So I did see that this was something that was a big topic of discussion for the community of Derek Jackson, but part of that was kind of listening to the apology and not pulling it apart necessarily, because that's what it looked like was being done. Everyone was saying how they would never sit by a man in their living room holding his hand while he told everybody that he cheated on you. So with that, who do you guys think is taking the L? Like in this situation, do you think it's Mrs. Jackson who took the L here? Or do you think it is Derek Jackson? Because one, now his entire following knows, what happened behind closed doors. Or for her, because now, again, yes, everybody knows, but now I'm sure people have opinions about how she should respond or what she should have done. Or why is she staying by him? Why did she stay?
Yeah. For those of you guys who are just joining us, we're talking about Derek Jackson. Yep. And so Paige asked the question, who took the biggest L here? Did Derek Jackson or did Mrs. Jackson? And how would you guys manage this relationship? And more so speaking from a marriage standpoint too, I think it's more important to emphasize that, not that they're just dating, but they've been married for 5 years. They've dated, I think, through college, right? Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm. So he actually said that he started his platform based on explaining to men like how to better treat women, because he was explaining how he lost what he references as the love of his life, who is now his wife, in college because he wasn't being faithful, and he was just out there doing things that probably weren't seen as good to be doing in a relationship. He was probably out there acting single while he was in a relationship, pretty much, is what it sounded like.
Yeah. Boosted Dad said Mrs. Jackson took the L. He's our only participant today in the chat.
Thanks, Boosted Dad. What do you think, or what is your reasoning for thinking that she took the L? Is it because of the public eye now, or is it because of her now having to go through the steps to repair and trust and rebuild basically what was broken on somebody else's end? It wasn't her doing, but yet now she has to take part in the rebuilding process. I think that's actually really common too, is that whoever was cheated on,
the misconception that the person who stuck it around is the one that took the L.
Yeah, that they took the L, but also that they're weak, or they're unstable in some kind of way. And I'm not talking about like mentally unstable, but just like, they're not in a
instability, like they have some sort of instability, whether it's financial need or they're just weak in general. They're a weak person. They're codependent.
Yeah.
And so, in that aspect, Paige is asking, why do you think Mr. Jackson took the L? Boosted Dad.
And there's really no wrong answer, honestly. It's just, we really want to see what you guys think and kind of weigh in on that situation. Because we've been in the comments reading them, everyone else's opinions. And I feel like that's the hard part about anybody who has a platform or who is an influencer or celebrity. I mean, you've seen plenty of celebrity divorces and stuff like that. And then because they're in the public eye, everybody has their opinion and likes to weigh in for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying people aren't entitled to their opinions. My thing is just, chances are they don't care what you have to say.
Yeah, I mean, just imagine what, I mean, just from his standpoint, like,
yeah,
his platform. I mean, not to say that hers is any less valuable, but being that he is a public figure and everyone's going to feel some type of way, but I think that's a lot of weight to bear. And let's see what Lucy does. She sat there and agreed with everything he said. There's very serious topics should be treated as such.
I agree. Do you mean treated behind closed doors? Like he didn't owe anybody an explanation or a public apology, but instead owed maybe his wife the privacy of not going public with it.
My wife says she thinks they both took a L.
I could see that.
For sure.
I feel like on both sides, you know what I mean? There's going to be a loss.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like we said, now there's a rebuilding process that's going to need to happen in order to move forward. But on top of that, you also release rights once you do something like that to try to tell somebody when they can heal or how to heal or the timeline they're supposed to heal. And that's a humility pill. I'm sure it is. You know what I mean? Like trying to go through that. But I think accepting the responsibility and his role, I got to commend him for that. I do. And also for her being able to extend, like we said, that grace. And yeah.
Yeah. Emphasis on grace. I will say that's one of the things that stood out to me the most, regardless of who took the L here. Derek, he attributed everything was through God's love and grace. And had it not been for, God's grace, that this wouldn't be possible, meaning the rebuilding of his relationship. And including his wife also attributed that to God as well. And her seeing his behavioral change and, in that, in his faith. And so I think extra emphasis on where the what they're trusting in, and not so much he was saying like he couldn't do this on his own account. Like there's no way. He's saying with her, she was saying that there's no way they could have done this, without God being the center of their relationship and the center of this process of going through the repairing of the relationship.
Yeah. For me, one of the things that stood out was she made it clear that she did leave. She left until she felt he made the necessary adjustments. And then on top of that, sought counsel for what was going on. And not just any counsel, but wise counsel. And we will get into that a little bit more tonight. But yeah, that was just something we wanted to throw out on the table and kind of see what you guys thought about it, how you guys felt, especially with today's topics. It was very relevant.
Hey, and I also wanted to say this is why LMG was started. What the emphasis on Derek, what he said, and the only reason why he attributed to his life or his marriage being repaired was because of love and grace, and I can't say that enough, and that's why the brand is what it is. It's not supposed to be just a t-shirt. It's supposed to be a lifestyle. It's supposed to be a representation of God and who God is, and so 100%. Emphasis on LNG.
You see the hat. Anywho, so moving forward, we just want to talk about L's, and I feel like everybody can relate everybody has taken an L at some point in their life, in any area, honestly. It can happen in your career, in your home, within your family, your marriage, and sports, and business, and finance, you name it. It's not it's not like just one area of your life takes L's. Like, it's wherever, honestly. So we just kind of wanted to get into that
Yeah.
for.
Remember we talked about last week or 2 weeks ago, the dips in your day.
Yeah.
Those are typically when you're taking an L in a particular situation, or whether that be like Paige said, like relationally, or at work. And so before we actually hop into it, I wanted to ask you guys, for those of you guys that were with us last week, how was your guys' last 2 weeks? Were you guys able to apply the 5 E's? Did you guys find that useful? Or did you guys, just brain dump in and you're ready for the next two weeks?
Yeah. So I hope you guys did. I
How
hope
we
you guys
feeling?
used one of those E's.
One E. Just
I
one?
know. Yeah. I know for myself, I had to use the E system. And we'll explain the spiraling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you guys want to drop a number, you know what to do. Drop the number in the chat.
You know what numbers we're talking about.
300 to 850. How y'all doing today? How y'all doing, chat? Let us know. But yeah, let's go ahead, Paige. Let's get into the content.
Right. So again, like I said, we're going to just kind of talk about L's and taking L's and what we have experienced in taking L's and what a real L is, because it's not the same L that you guys are thinking about. So yeah. So I will say, just off the top of my head, the one place I know I have taken some significant L's is in the family setting. By that, I just mean my family, the people that I love and I care about, and I would, do my utmost in the event that they needed anything, is also my biggest blind spot. And I say this because when you have a blind spot, you're more susceptible to L's in those areas. And
blind L's, not the blind side.
Yeah.
Not your blind side.
Yeah.
Check your blind spot.
Have y'all ever been blindsided? No? Y'all ever just get cleaned up?
Yeah, I have plenty.
Right. So
feet overhead.
Yeah, for myself, it's for sure in the family setting. Just because I feel like there was times that I'm not at all proud of. Like prior to that, I have gone to bat for people, or I have inserted myself in order to defend people when you're not supposed to defend people sometimes, honestly. And I feel like that's a hard pill to swallow, because when you love somebody, you just want to come to their aid. When you see them hurting, when you see somebody bashing them or anything like that, I don't know what it is. It's not even maternal, because this was before I had kids. So I can't even say it was a maternal instinct. It's just a blind spot. So in that area, there have been times where I think about now, and it's honestly cringe worthy at times, but it was a L in that time. But now I understand the real L, which is the lesson in it, which is understanding that there are times when you have to sit on the sidelines and allow people to go through the things they're going through, because sometimes that lesson isn't for you, it's for them. And if you go ahead and you want to shield them every single time from being hurt, they're not going to grow from that. And some people will allow you just to keep getting hurt for their sake, because you didn't let them go through it.
Oof. Yeah, that's a hard one. I can definitely empathize with that. Trying to do everything you can to deflect that L from happening when, again, a lot of us think, there's the blessings are always just getting our way, but that's not how life works. And man, if you've ever taken a big L, you know that some of the greatest, life lessons you learn was taking that L. And much like a loss, like the analogy of loss of a person, if you've ever lost a loved one, someone near and dear to you, man, like you find some way to carry on that person's legacy. And so even though you may have suffered a loss with a person, something of that person lives on within you, or you at least try to make, honor their life by somehow carrying on something that person did. And so for myself, I lost a cousin at a really young age. My cousin Nico, he passed away before he even turned 21. And I was away from home when it happened, and I was, in the military. And so anyway, one of the things Nick used to do all the time when we used to hang out together, and, we're up to no good driving around doing nothing, we would run a yellow light, and Nick would make sure everyone in the car would kiss the roof. And I'm not a superstitious person. I don't believe any superstitions. But he wanted to make sure everyone was on board with what he was doing. And so he would punch you. I'm talking, he would unbuckle his seatbelt and try to fight you in the car until you kiss the roof. And so that's one of the things to this day that I still do. And you can ask my wife whenever I'm driving around. I make it a point to kiss the roof, not because I'm the superstition, but because, I think about Nico all the time, and there's not a day that goes by I don't think about him. And so that's one of the things I carried on with or about, for him. And the other thing was when we used to hang out, Nick would always bring around people. Like, he would always bring anybody and everybody to our little circle. And for me, I was more of a protector. I wanted to keep what we had, and didn't want anybody new stepping in the circle without, going through the proper steps of getting welcomed. And so anytime he brought somebody by, I'd be like, yo, bro, like, who is this? Like, well, he's like, nah, they're cool. And I'm like, nah, bro, like, don't be bringing people around here like that. And then, so anyway, I had this whole tough man persona or tough guy persona, and Nick was just,
you're just a skeptic.
He just loved everybody, and he would bring everybody around. And so from that point on, when Nick passed, man, I was like, man, I wasted so much time in my life of being a tough guy. And so once that happened, man, it changed me. Like, I honestly was like, yo, like, I wasted so much time being that person. And so now I make it a point, you know what I mean, to just engage random people or welcome people the way Nick would. And so anyway.
We always joke, we say that if you were to see my brother out in public, he would just kind of scoot a little bit closer and then just be like, what's your story, bro? What's your story? It's not a joke. But
that's my thing now. I really, really make it a point now to, like, and it's not on some superficial level either. It's not like, yo, I like your shoes. It's like, hey, bro, I want to know your story. Like, what's your story? I think everybody has a story. And even for those, again, the biggest L's, man, somebody really close to me, I'm not going to say his name or what relation he has to me. He thinks that his life, is a total screw up. And I said, man, you know what? I said, your biggest screw up is going to be the most impactful thing to somebody's life.
Yep.
And I was like, I hope to one day be able to have, share this platform and share your story with somebody, because I guarantee you somebody is going to be impacted by your life. And the things that you've gone through and the things you've grown from is because of an L. And so, again, man, like your biggest L's can turn into your biggest blessings, no cap.
Yep, 100%. And prior to this story, I actually had no idea about the kiss the roof thing, but I would see it in the car, and I thought I missed something, so I would just like do it too. But I literally had no idea until he told this story. I was like, oh, okay, well that makes sense now. I was just doing it because I thought I missed out on something at FOMO, so I had to join. But yeah, so when it comes to family, like I said, it's been one of my biggest L's, and my brother explained the change that can occur when you actually lose somebody close to you. And I think one of those things that goes hand in hand with that is also accepting that there are some times where suffering happens on account of somebody else. So it can be happening around you for any one specific person. And that is something that I felt like I have seen and I always think about when we have lost somebody is if all of this happened because one person was at a service or one person came to the house and seen the reaction in terms of, yes, there's human emotion that occurs, but there's also a supernatural response that occurs because there's a peace that you have when you lose somebody and you know that that's not it. You know what I mean? When you know that we were passing through and physically I'm going to miss you, yes, but what I hold on to is the fact that I'm going to see you again. So the idea that when we lose somebody, that there can be that one person sitting in the audience, and this could have all happened because, yes, it may have been that person's time, but also to get that one person to know that they are loved and they are forgiven and they are covered, then at that point, it's also worth it. And even though we may be hurting, somebody amongst God, all the angels are rejoicing for that one person. So again,
yeah, let's go. Yeah, as Mother Teresa says, if you can't, or if you can't feed 100, just feed one, and that's the mentality that we're trying to say here. Like even though, again, like if you took a L, like Paige said, and it was something that was um, something unprevented, like you couldn't prevent, and again, it may seem like an L to you, but on the other side of that, for someone else, I mean, you may have saved a life, you may have impacted somebody's life in a way that you have no idea. And again, that's where Paige is talking about the supernatural. Yeah, the human emotion attached to an L is there, but again, me and my wife, when we came home from Vegas from her birthday, we were stuck, waiting for a taxi like forever. It felt like anyway, and so of course we're all disgruntled after flying. We got the kids, and we're just sitting there waiting, and then someone finally shows up. We finally got an Uber or a Lyft. I don't remember what it was, but in that delay, there was a huge accident on the 405, and a car was like, I think it was turned over on its side or something, and it came down to one lane. And so in that time, in that L, so to speak, that we took, it's just sitting there waiting. We were so inconvenienced with our time, it prevented possibly us from being a part of that accident. And so, again, the supernatural, there's some things that you just can't explain. And there are just some L's that you have to take and take it in stride.
Sometimes, like we said, they might not even be for you. They could be for somebody else. So it's really about controlling how you respond to your L. And that is that is a big thing because like my brother said, some things you can't control. And so the only thing you can control is going to be how you respond. So holding on to that emotion or not letting it drive you, it's not about demonizing a natural response or emotion, but again, it's about being obedient and taking it to a supernatural level and being acceptant of the time that might have had to happen in order for something better to align or for a lesson to occur. Because half the time it's about working on you or working on something behind the scenes for you. And we just, all we see is what's in front of us. We do a pretty good job at only focusing on what's in front of us and not what's going on behind the scenes for us.
Yeah, I see you, Kai Kai. That's awesome, boy. I'm sorry to hear about your cousin, and that's awesome that you carry that on, though.
I'm missing it. Okay. Some other else we wanted to touch on was really like how culture asks you to respond to an L or what an L looks like in culture. And I would say, in my opinion, the biggest push culturally is the bag. Like you could take an L, but as long as the bag is secured, you're good. You can take an L on the bag, but as long as you are doing something to accumulate another bag, then it's fine. And that can be relationships are disposable at that point. People are disposable at that point. Everything besides pursuing the bag is disposable. And I feel like that is a terrible mentality. But it's definitely, I think it's a young mentality is what I would say. And an immature mentality in a certain point. I don't think there's anything wrong with money. I don't think there's anything wrong with having goals and being financially stable and things like that. But I will tell you from my standpoint as a young adult now who had a very similar mentality in my young adulthood, like in my early 20s. Now the only things I want are the things that money cannot buy me. And the main thing is my time. My time, my time, my time. Because with my time, I'm able to spend it how I want to spend it. I can spend it here doing podcasts with you guys. I can spend it with my kids. I can spend it with my husband. I can spend it in different areas. But nobody can give that back to me. There will always be a bag to get. I can always make more money, but you're not going to be able to give me more time. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that bag can be anything, really. And man, I spent some time in prayer earlier, and this phrase came to mind was misplaced ambitions. And I think a lot of times we set these goals to reach for a number or a car or a house, and
Security. It's security.
the things that we find culturally secure in, and the things that you're supposed to check off as a person sometimes can cause you the most grief and block your blessings, causing you L's that are self-inflicted. And learning that, man, is tough. Even to this day, I am still struggling to being an ambitious person, being an entrepreneur, being a business owner. Sometimes these L's, as Paige will tell you, you can get in a spiral. And sometime last year, I was having the conversation with myself and my wife about taking a job and whether or not that was the best interest for me and what my goals in life were, and for our family, and so on. And so here I am again this year, kind of in the same conversation, but on the other side of that, now I'm saying, do I really need this job? Like, do I need it? And having that conversation with my wife. And so somewhere in there, I think I made a wrong turn, and you'll find that out. Like, there's a time in your life where you're gonna be like, man, this happened to me. I had this same thought before, and I'm not joking. It was this time last year, close to this time last year, that I took this job, and I was like, swore I needed this job to feel secure and safe, and to provide, and this, that, and the other. And I mean, I don't. Again, I don't know if this. I'm taking another turn this time. I'm not going the same direction. Mm-hmm. So I'll tell you guys a year from now where I'm at. But I'm going the other way this time with it.
We'll see if there's another U-turn involved or not.
And you're going to get it wrong sometimes, and that's
a detour.
And that's the point. The point. Yep. Sometimes you're going to get it wrong, and you're going to catch that L. And then again, like we said, the lessons that come with that. Again, they might not even be just for you. It might be for somebody else. Somebody else might be gaining something from that decision on the other side. And so always keep that in mind, and just take everything in stride, man.
100%. And I think part of that also, what I heard was you taking responsibility for knowing that you had this conversation last year. So acknowledging that, and then trying to find the silver lining and the lesson in that. And even though it did feel like an L right off the bat, like, oh man, like, it's not a good feeling, but like I said, you owned up to it, and now you're making the necessary adjustments. That's great. That self-realization and that peace, it's underrated, boy.
Yeah. Man, I'm going to share some, I'm going to share in my first two falling outs of marriage. I think you have a guest speaker behind you. Shout out to my nephew Thomas, or Tama, for his
guest appearance.
Guest appearance again. But no, so in my first two marriages, I failed. And though I felt maybe I wasn't the cause of it, I still took ownership and accountability for myself. And I gave this advice to somebody close to me who was kind of going through something similar, that, I took it upon myself to apologize to these individuals, even though, again, and I may not feel like I was at fault because I was the one to make the decision to get out, but at the same time, they didn't deserve, whatever came with that decision. And so I was holding myself accountable to the things that I did. And it was never about that other person. It was more so about the freedom that it was allowing me, to grow as a person. And so, again, I took accountability and responsibility for myself, and just going to them and saying, hey, I'm sorry for how things happened. I wouldn't, again, that's not to say that I would change it, because I wouldn't be the person I am today. I wouldn't be able to serve my wife now the way I'm able to serve her now, and have the patience and endurance to do the things I do now. Because I'll tell you up front, if I was still the person I was 10 years ago, I probably would have made the mistake again. But it takes, within yourself to look at yourself first. Mm-hmm. Like, if you're playing the victim your whole life, like saying, someone else did something and that's why it happened, you're part of that problem, because you're only looking at them as if, they did everything, but you still had a part in whatever took place. And so for myself, again, like I said, maybe I wasn't as intentional as I could have been, or I could have done something better. And so for that part, I was apologizing for, not because of the decision, but because of myself and the things that I did or I lacked.
Yeah. And like I said, I feel like the biggest thing is, like you said, finding that silver lining, but also taking up your responsibility in it. Because like you said, the victimized mindset, what we hear a lot, especially in culture, is, why would God allow this to happen?
Yeah, why me?
Why me? Why would God allow this to happen? And I mean, not even trying to be, I'm like empathetic for, certain things that go on for people or for individuals, but at the same time, we do have to look at a situation and find out what was our responsibility in that. How could we have better responded? Yes. And also understanding that there are, again, some things that we will have to go through. There are some suffering that you will have to go through. And part of that, again, is about how you're going to respond. For somebody who's on the outside of you or who is around you looking in, are they going to see that you still have peace even while you're suffering? Or are they going to see the moment you endure suffering that your faith or your hope is gone at that point? And like I said, those interactions for some people might be huge. It might be huge. You might be the difference. Your obedience in a season can be detrimental for somebody. You know what I mean? And the same thing with your disobedience. And that's not to say that they won't come across those crossroads again, because of course, the way it works out, I'm sure God will align it accordingly. But again, your obedience could really make a difference for somebody, and your response to certain situations in your life. So I think one of my favorite stories or verses in regards to this is actually because of the context. And I really used to have a favorite verse in high school that you will see on a lot of people's Instagram and on t-shirts, you name it, it's out there. But Philippians 4:13 is probably one of the most used, popular verses that you will see. But the verse prior to it and the context of it, can you go ahead and unpack that for us? Because I feel like in the space that Paul was in here, he kind of explains that through what he's saying, but also he's being an example of that by controlling his response.
Yeah. So a lot of you guys may have heard the verse, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me or who gives me strength. And so, yeah, I used to sign in with my signature. I think the Katinas were the ones that kind of inspired that idea for me. And but once it got like really mainstream and like overused and kind of like watered down, I went and just looked into the whole chapter myself and did some self-studying. And so anyways, Paul was writing from prison when he said this. And so the context of the verse before that actually says, whether I have a full stomach, a full bank account, or an empty bank account, God's still going to provide everything that I need. And all that I have is here right now, what I have. And so that is just a shift in mindset, in a sense, like we're talking about taking L's. You know, it starts with you and in your mindset and where you're at. And so having that mindset going into any, I guess, loss or whatever it is that you're experiencing in life, God's going to provide whatever it is that you need. And as you all may have heard, God won't give you any battle that you cannot withstand. And as Paige said earlier, sometimes you're not called to be the spear. Sometimes you're called to be the shield.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of us, we want to be the spear all the time and go full force with everything. But there's a season for everything. And sometimes that's just to sit and observe or do absolutely nothing and watch, what takes place.
Yeah. My brother was open about something else he had taken previously in marriage. For myself personally, I feel like that is one area where I jokingly wrote this note down and said, like, that is the one area where you will take the most L's, because that is going to be where you learn how to compromise best. Growing up as a kid, if you had siblings, maybe you had to compromise, but you could normally like fight, and then whoever won got whatever they wanted. In marriage, it's not really how it works. So you actually have to really die to yourself. You really have to take some L's and some humility pills and just bite the bullet sometimes in terms of picking and choosing your battles. Because not everything that you come across and not every emotion or feeling is going to be true. And I feel like that is something that needs to be said and separated, because our feelings are not necessarily true. It doesn't mean that they're wrong, but when you go based off of your feelings or you say something out of emotion, chances are that emotion's not going to be there the next day. But you know what's going to be there is the things that came out of your mouth, and they're going to resonate however they may have with your spouse. So that for me is something that I have learned. Not so much the just shooting from the hip, but I'm a, what is it, fight or flight? I'm the flight. I'll run. We don't have to address it. I just completely shut down. Like, that's my method of coping. There's just no words coming out. You can keep talking, but you're just not going to get a response, because in my mind, me saying something out of emotion is going to be worse than me putting it on the table and talking about it when I'm ready. When I've sorted through my emotion and I've actually gotten to the root of what I'm upset about or what the issue is at hand. Because I will tell you, most of the times, what somebody is saying is not what you are hearing. And if you use that exercise in the next argument with your spouse or whoever you need to use it with, ask them, what are you saying? And you tell them what you heard, because they will not be the same. And you will be looking at each other like, that's not what I said. Yes, that's what you said. That's what I heard you say. It's literally what you said. So yeah, in marriage, for sure, I feel like I have learned some tools on taking L's. And one of those is humility. Yeah, humility and recognizing my fight or flight.
Yeah, I'm the opposite. I'm the fighter, or as I would call it, the fixer. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to go to bed mad. I don't want another minute to pass. Again, this may come because of trauma, and maybe it comes a loss of a loved one, but I don't want to waste energy, man. I don't want to sit here and be upset, because when something happens in the context of, let's say, marriage and relationships, I want to fix it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to waste any more energy or time sitting in that. And so one of the things that I had to learn, the L that I had to take with Jess, is because she's much like you, is she's the runner too. And
shout out to Cardi.
so for me, like I took even again, I don't. This might be because of trauma, but I took running as a sign of like like a disrespectful thing, you know, like as a I don't even know how to explain it. Like no, that's not what you're supposed to do. You know, like this is how you're supposed to fix things. So you got to fix it like right now. Like you know, like but learning to be or learning to be empathetic in that sense with Jess, and that's how she copes, and that's how her survival method is, and learning to deal with that is the L, so to speak. I had to learn to take, and as you said, there's just sometimes you're not supposed to be a spear. Sometimes you just gotta be the helmet and just be there, like chilling, waiting for her to cool off, and that's okay. But yeah, for sure, marriage. I can again, I can attribute to that. I've been divorced twice, and as I spoke about it, like man, it's if man, if marriage was easy, then their divorce rate wouldn't be so high. And again, like I said, if I was the same person I was 10 years ago, then I wouldn't be able to do the things I do now, or my tolerance would not be as high as it is now or my patience anyway.
Yeah.
And so I mean, let's talk about this in the sense of the Jackson family.
Mm-hmm.
We mentioned who took the bigger L here, and Jess said both. Boosted Dad said Mrs. Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
if you guys missed it,
okay.
If you guys missed the intro, we were discussing Derek Jackson and Mrs. Jackson, and basically what is on a lot of social media feeds right now, which is a cheating scandal that has surfaced. And we were just kind of talking about the apology video that they released, and we had asked, who do you guys think took the bigger L in this situation?
Yeah. And so anyways, as we were saying, on the other side of this L of either or Mr. or Mrs. Jackson,
mm-hmm.
How do you determine, how do you gauge that? And I would argue that, I mean, they might be better served before this happened. And I mean, I'm just saying that because for me anyway, the biggest L's and lessons I took, were through those hardships, and I would attribute my character now to those things that I've overcome. And so, if you've ever been in a place where you've been in the doghouse, fellas, you had to dig yourself out. I mean, that's a hard road, and it's a very vulnerable place. But if you've really screwed up, and you have to take that walk of shame, so to speak, you do whatever you got to do in order to make your wife happy, or your husband happy, or whatever it is, your significant other. And so, how do you gauge that? How do you gauge who took the biggest L here? And if we're taking L's and turning them into blessings, was this an L? And so,
really an L?
Was it though? And so my other question too is, as Paige said, the suffering of you could be for somebody else, and in this case, that could be for her.
Are you willing to?
And what if your wife or your husband or your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your mom or your dad was better served because of your suffering? Like, what if this was something you had to do in order to get to them and to a better place of understanding, a better place of peace? Would you then do it? And my argument is, or my challenge to you is, if your answer is no, you don't know the love and grace of God.
I think literally, as you were saying that, what came to mind was our grandparents, and the type of endurance that they built up over the years. They got some endurance, about some marathon type endurance. Shout out to them. But yeah, and one of the things that we did talk about when we talked about their vulnerability and the vulnerability that had to come with this video for both of them to sit there on a platform of however it's like 1 million followers that he has, and be open about what went on, you have to be careful. Because this can go both ways, realistically. But vulnerability is an opportunity. And it can be an opportunity for good or for bad. Because there are some people who see your vulnerability as an opportunity to come in.
Yeah, all those guys sliding into your DMs, ladies. Yeah, that's an opportunity. And as Paige said, if vulnerability let's just talk about the relational part of it. If there's a vulnerability within your relationship, say you're lacking something, you're lacking attentiveness or words of affirmation, and somebody slides in your DMs like, yo, what's up, beautiful? Whatever it is, and you entertain this, like, right, you're allowing this. You're now placing a void or a roadblock within your relationship. And so this is a self-inflicted L that you're allowing yourself to take, allowing a blessing to be blocked. And so I'm not just speaking on females, fellas, you too. If you're not getting something at home or you're allowing a vulnerability to be filled somewhere else within your marriage or your relationship.
Yeah.
It's just Paige said, be careful. And that also comes with the advice that you're taking.
Yep. Wise counsel.
Emphasis on the wise counsel Miss Jackson was talking about that her husband was now getting. If somebody has your ear, they have your life. Period. Like, that means if you're allowing someone to speak into your life, if you're taking advice from somebody, you're now allowing them to help determine your decision making for your life. And I want to warn those of you guys that are married or that are in any sort of situation where your decisions impact others, that you now have, you're allowing someone else to dictate what happens, within your life. And so, again, if you look into somebody's life and you don't like what you see, you don't love what you see, it's not something that you're after, then I would be careful who you're taking advice from.
100%. You need to have some standard, a standard of who you're getting this advice from and why they are qualified to give you advice. And
that goes for us too.
Yeah. For our married folks or anybody who's in a serious relationship who's, trying to take that next step to go the long haul with somebody. The people you're seeking advice from, make sure their relationship is reflective of the one that you want. And then on top of that, you have to make sure that they also love your spouse. They need to love your spouse or your significant other just as much as you do, or else they aren't going to have the same intent. People can, yes, speak from the heart and speak from a place where they feel like they're being caring. But let me tell you, if I don't love your spouse, or if I feel a certain type of way about somebody, am I going to give you the best advice without an opinion attached? Some people can, yes, that's true, they can. But it's very rare to find somebody who's going to give you an unbiased opinion because they don't love them also the same way you do. So have a standard.
Oh, man. Your standards threw me off. I was about to say something.
It's too many standards.
No, yeah, for sure. I think, I forgot who said it. Yeah. Extra emphasis on who you allow to speak into your life. That's what I was going to say was, and that's why I placed an emphasis too on thanking you guys for being here. Because not just because you guys are our family, but for the support, but also because you guys are giving us your ears. And I don't take that lightly.
Not at all.
And you guys are providing us this platform to be able to speak into your lives. And that must mean that you're being encouraged or educated or informed in some matter. And so, again, we thank you guys. But again, that's just to say that I also want to place an emphasis on doing your own due diligence and measuring this with God's principles. Or if that's not your thing, then whatever it is that your standard is, like Paige said, make sure you can look into someone else's life, and want that. And as I think as we're saying, it says, like, if you're not inspired by your circle, then you're in a cage. Mm-hmm. And so if those people that are around you in your circle aren't inspiring or encouraging you, then, more than likely you're in the wrong circle.
Yep. 100%. The Boosted Dad shared a comment below. I said, yep, I had someone who was close to being done with life, and because I took time to go out with him and help him out, that action was changed.
Man, that's awesome, bro.
That's huge. That is huge. And like we mentioned last week, to be able to be inconvenienced by somebody, and not necessarily saying that people are an inconvenience, but you were intentional. You were intentional about going out with that individual and, you know, just taking time to hear him out or taking time to spend time with him. And because you did that, it changed the trajectory of what he wanted and what he did, honestly. And I mean, I'm sure that person is extremely grateful.
Yeah, for sure. But man, we're pushing an hour right now, so thank you guys who stuck around. Derek Jackson, you know, had an extra time with us today.
Yeah.
But again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We can't thank you guys enough. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up. If you guys have any questions, comments, again, content ideas, things you guys want us to address, go ahead and throw them in the chat box.
In 2 weeks, just as a heads up, we'll be back on here like we have the last 3 weeks. You guys know because you guys have been in the chat box and tuning in, so thank you guys. But we are moving into stewardship.
Stewie.
Stewie Louie.
That's a fancy Christian word that Paige made up. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I made it up just for this. Yeah.
Stewardship, Paige. Why don't you unpack that word for them, in case those viewers that don't know what that word means?
Okay. The job of supervising or taking care of something. Supervising or taking care of something. So we'll unpack that in 2 weeks and we'll get into it some more.
Yeah. So in stewardship, so some of you guys are familiar with the word tithing. And so tithing is giving 10% of your income to the church. And so for a lot of us, the misconception is God wants our money. Nah, bro. God doesn't need your money. God was always after your heart. And for a lot of us, that's where our heart is with our money. And for some of us, it might be something else. It might be your time. It might be some other resource that you have that you're holding on tight to. And so, that's what we'll be unpacking next week or 2 weeks, stewardship, and then
the mismanagement that can occur in stewardship. Y'all ain't ready. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it.
But that's it for this week, you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Again, turn all your losses into lessons, and y'all will be good.
Yeah, take them L's and turn them into blessings. God bless you guys. Peace.
Peace.